Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
G'day, Starlo here, and I'm out on the water for another one of my regular Tuesday YAK chats coming to you from the kayak. I've been getting some great feedback from viewers on topics that they'd like to see me tackle in these chats, so I thought I'd pick one today, and it's one that's come up a couple of times, and it's the subject of angling etiquette. How we behave towards each other out on the water and towards other water users as well. I think it's a really good topic to talk about. But the first thing that I'd say about it is there are no hard and fast rules. No one's written the book on angling etiquette. Some clubs and associations have got lists of behaviour that they'd like to see their members display towards other members and other anglers. And of course, tournaments and competitions often have rules that cover things related to etiquette. But what I thought I'd just have a chat today is about just some of the ideas about how we can all get on out on the water and not tread on each other's toes. Like I said, there aren't very many hard and fast rules about it, but there are things that we can do that make life easier for ourselves and for other people out on the water. It really does vary a fair bit depending on the scenario too. It's a very different situation on, say, a crowded jetty or wharf in the middle of a big city compared to a long, empty beach out in a more remote area. And your behaviour does have to vary a little bit to suit those different scenarios, I think. The sense of personal space tends to tighten in when we're in really crowded situations on that city wharf or pier. It might be quite reasonable to stand literally shoulder to shoulder with other anglers while you're fishing. That's not going to go over too well if you try and do it on a long empty beach and you walk up and stand right next to someone and start casting and cast over their line or whatever. So there does have to be some flexibility. And I think one of the things that I would say is that a lot of it comes down to common sense. And I've heard it said that common sense is a fairly uncommon attribute these days. I think that's a little bit unfair. I think rather than common sense, do unto others is a really, really good philosophy to adopt when you're thinking about fishing etiquette. In other words, how would you like people to behave towards you? How would you like them to respect you and your personal space? And then apply that to other people. Do it yourself. And I think that would overcome a lot of the etiquette issues that we hear about, people dropping in on other anglers and things like that. One of the angles worth thinking about is whether you're in a boat or a kayak, like I'm in a kayak today, or you're land-based. And land-based anglers don't have the same flexibility that boat and kayak fishers do. And for that reason, when I'm in a boat or a kayak, I always try and give a reasonably wide berth to those people that are fishing from the shore. You don't want to crowd them. You certainly don't want to run over their lines and get in their way when they're fishing. So give them a little bit of space. They're stuck in one spot. You can go wherever you like. So just stay out from them a bit. When I used to do a lot of live baiting off the rocks back in the 1970s and 80s, spinning and live baiting down at Jervis Bay, I've seen quite a few fish lost to boats going over the line when a big fish is hooked up, and I had an absolute heartbreaker myself. Spent an hour and a quarter fighting what would have definitely been my biggest yellowfin tuna off the rocks. Had it in sight many times and eventually had it on the surface about 300 metres out, and I'm gaining line on it, and a boat came round the corner about 150 metres out, headed straight towards my line, and we're all jumping up and down and screaming and shouting on the rocks, and the people in the boat were waving back because that's what they thought we were doing. And of course they ran over the line and I lost the fish. Took me a long time to get over that. I was only about 19 at the time, and I was absolutely devastated at losing that big yellowfin. And it just comes to, they didn't do it on purpose. They just didn't realise that anyone could have that much line out on a fish. So think about stuff like that. That's all part of etiquette. What about two boat fishers when they're coming into the same area? Well, in my book, the first person to arrive always has dibs on that spot. So if they're fishing a particular bank and they're headed in one direction, they're motoring along on their electric motor or they're drifting along and they're casting, the last thing you want to do is drop in, go in front of them and fish an area they haven't already fished. If you want to fish that same bit of bank, come in behind them and fish the water they've already fished. Yeah, you're fishing second-hand water, but they were there first, and you'd be surprised how many fish get caught out of second-hand water. Don't write it off, but don't go in front of them. Sometimes it happens inadvertently. There might be a long point and you're on one side of it and another boat's on the other side, and you're both fishing towards the point without even knowing that the other boat's there. And you arrive at a point where you can see each other. What do you do in that situation? Well, what I would do is just keep fishing along the way that I was fishing, and they keep fishing along the way that they were fishing. And when you get close enough, just call out to them and say, oh, do you mind if I keep going, or would you rather I went somewhere else? Communication is a big part of the game, just actually talking to people about their expectations and what they'd like to see you do. I remember reading an article once about road rage, and it was saying that one of the major causes of road rage is the fact that you can't communicate with the other person in the other car, and also they tend to be depersonalised and disembodied because they're in a car rather than just walking along. Contrast it with people just walking down the street. If you bump into someone when you're walking down the street accidentally, you go, oh, sorry, and instantly your body language and your speech just diffuses that situation, and you don't tend to get pedestrian rage quite as much as you get road rage. But when you're in a car and you can't communicate with that other person, the first thing that everyone does is bristle up and get angry and start honking the horn or giving the finger or whatever, and that's how road rage happens. So by communicating with someone, by just saying, oh, look, sorry, mate, I didn't realise that you were fishing there, and 9 times out of 10 they're going to go, no, that's all right, come on in. Oh, I'm getting a few fish here and I'm using this for bait. Talk to people. That's a really, really big part of diffusing those situations. Speaking of talking, I'm doing way too much of it and not enough fishing. I've got a little deep diving chubby on here, and I'm going to have a troll. You may have seen recently I did a whole Tuesday chat on trolling, techniques and some pitfalls to avoid. So I'm going to be pushing into the last of the run-out tide here as I troll, so I won't need to go very fast. I talked about that in that Tuesday chat. If you missed that one, make sure you check it out. The first thing I'm going to do, though, is get these sunglasses on, because I'm squinting talking to you. It's winter, would you believe it? Winter on the far south coast of New South Wales. Looks pretty damn good, doesn't it? It's pushing 20 degrees. Mind you, it was about 6 degrees when I got up this morning. We do get cold nights, but it has turned into a glorious day. I've got a boat coming in here at the moment. I'm kind of on the edge of the channel, but I'm going to do the right thing and make sure that I pass that boat with him or her on my left. That's what we do on the water. We keep the other vessel to our left. I'm just going to make sure that I don't get in his way and get run over. And then I'll put this lure out and start trolling. I'm in pretty shallow water here at the moment. As I've told you before, I don't have electronics in my kayak, but I can tell the depth just by looking over the side. It looks like it's about 1.6 metres deep here. Not deep enough for this lure. So I'll get down a little bit further and I'll put it out. And I'll give this bloke a wave as he comes past. That's another thing, just be friendly to other people on the water. Make it obvious that you've seen them. Give them a wave, get a wave back, and all is good. Out she goes. Wow, what a lovely day to be on the water. Life is good. Now there's a bit of a wake coming. He's going nice and slow, but he's actually pushing up quite a bit of wake, so I'm just going to make sure I get my bow into it. Always important in a kayak, you don't want to be side on and get hit by that wake. That was pretty easy. I can feel that lure kicking away strongly out there. It doesn't actually seem to be... Oh yes, it's hitting the bottom now. So I'll just keep moving down here into the channel. Yeah, that's shoveling along through the sand now. There's very little in the way of weed or debris there, so I don't think it's going to pick anything up. And I'll just get into this slightly deeper water and start working my way up the edge of this sand flat here. I'm really hoping I might catch a flathead for dinner. That'd be nice. I don't seem to catch many fish during these Tuesday kayak chats. I don't know if I've ever actually caught a fish during one, have I? I'll have to have a look back through myself and see. But it would be nice to catch a fish while I'm talking to you. It's not the actual purpose of the Tuesday chats, but it would add a different dimension to it. Oh, that feels good now. I might even let a little bit more line out. I'm using my little BFS rod here. Hope I don't hook a dewy because I've only got about 35 or 40 metres of line on this reel. I'd have to chase it pretty quick in the kayak. This is good. I can't think of too many places I'd rather be, really. Maybe walking a sand flat in Exmouth. My daughter Amy is over in Exmouth working as an adventure guide at the moment, doing kayak tours and all sorts of exciting stuff. Some of you might remember a couple of years ago, Amy and I actually drove across to Exmouth together from the East Coast. Fantastic trip. It was quite an epic. And I made a couple of episodes about land-based fishing around Exmouth, which was really good. And I'm a little bit jealous of her with winter rolling on here on the south coast of New South Wales. I often think about Amy over there in Exmouth in that warm weather and that glorious aquamarine water and those flats with all those exotic fish swimming on them. But then I look out the window at where I live and I think, well, I don't really have too much to be jealous about. This is a very nice part of the world as well. Oh, my lure kicking along nicely out there. I'm covering some water. I'll get the first of the incoming tide in an hour or two, and I'm sort of a little bit hopeful that maybe some salmon or tailor might come in on the front of the tide. I'll go down towards the front of the entrance and see if I can find some of those on my lures later on. But this last part of the run out can be a really good time for flathead. I'm just putting my hand in the water to work out the temperature. Again, like I said, no electronics. I reckon that's about 17, maybe 18 degrees, that water, which is not too bad for June. So, you know, the flathead shouldn't have shut down completely yet. There's a few boats out on the water, you can probably hear them. So I'm keeping my wits about me and keeping an eye on those boats, because especially when they're getting up on the plane, you get that moment where the nose of the boat lifts and you lose visibility in front of yourself. Very easy to not see a kayaker at those times. So I just like to be on the ball and know that the people in the boat have seen me and they're not going to run over the top of me. This guy's coming around, he's going to come up the channel here, so I'll just make sure he has seen me. I'm well over on the left-hand side of the channel, the eastern side of the channel at the moment, so I'm not going to try and get on the other side of him and keep him on my left. Looks like he's doing that anyway. It's always a good idea if you're in a motorboat, you can much more easily manoeuvre than a sailboat or a kayak, so you can make the move. He looks like he's going to stop and have a fish anyway. Yeah, so getting back to etiquette, boat fishing, how close do you get to other boats? Again, depends on the situation. If there's a reef pinnacle and there's a whole bunch of boats anchored up in a fairly small area, you might be able to come in and fish fairly close to them. But as a rule of thumb, you should never get closer to another boat than you can cast. Say 30 or 40 metres, you shouldn't really be inside that distance, boat to boat. And if boats are anchored up, you need to be aware of where their anchor lines and everything are too. You don't want your lines or hooked fish going around them. But generally speaking, give them a wider berth than that if you can. Now, I mentioned before that if you were on a big, long, empty beach and there was another angler on it, you really don't want to go up and stand right next to them and fish. But what happens if there's only one decent gutter or one decent hole on that beach? Well, in that situation, I think it is okay to go up and fish the same structural element that they're fishing, but you can still give them a bit of separation. Don't get close enough that your line is going to go over theirs or your rigs are going to tangle in the surf. If they're at one end of the gutter or they're in the middle of it, you go up the other end, give them a little bit of separation. But there's nothing wrong with going and fishing the same obvious bit of fish holding territory. Same with schools of fish on the surface. And this is one that causes a lot of contention. Tuna busting up or salmon or tailor or whatever, and boats racing over and people casting lures into them. And the thing that really annoys people is trollers who just troll straight through the middle of the school while other people are casting at them. That is a big no-no. Don't do that. Not only will you upset the other anglers, but you probably won't catch anything and you'll probably put the school of fish down. So if you're going to troll around schools of fish, troll the edges of them, work out the direction the fish are going in and get ahead of them or whatever. And if other people are driving up and pulling up and casting, stay away from that school. Don't go and troll through the middle of that one. If you've got a boat that's already casting at a school of fish, kind of depends on the size of the school and how many others are around. If it's the only game in town, then there's nothing wrong with you going up and having a cast at them too. But don't run over the fish to get there. Come around the other anglers. You want to try and position yourself so you can cast with any wind behind you anyway. And you also want to get in front of the direction that the fish are moving. You should be able to do all those things without getting in the way of the other boat or boats and the other anglers that are already casting at those fish. Again, it's just a matter of that common sense that I talked about before and the do unto others thing. What would you want someone to do if you were already there fishing that school? You'd probably want them not to come over at all, but you've got to understand that other people are allowed to fish too. So if they do come over and fish, how would you like to see them handle that? Got another boat coming in here. It's going to be turning into the channel in a second as well. So I'll just keep an eye on that. Ooh. Don't think that was a fish. I think I just bumped the bottom. Must have been a little shallower patch just there. Yeah, it's bumping the bottom now. I reckon on the length of line that I've got this lure at, it's probably getting down about 2.2 metres. So when I'm bumping the bottom, I'm in less water than that. Good area for flathead though. Reasonably hopeful that I might get one. I will just check that lure because it has hit the bottom a couple of times now, and although there's not much here in the way of weed, it could have picked up something. Still feels like it's swimming all right, and you can tell a lot by the vibrations on the line. Feels to me like it's swimming really well. But I'll have a look while this boat's coming past. Clean as a whistle. Making constant contact with the bottom now. I can actually feel the bib of that lure hitting the sand and shoveling through it. So I've obviously come into some shallower water. I'm going to push out here a little bit to where it's slightly deeper. I mean, I could change lures and put something on that ran a bit shallower, but I just want to stick with that 2 to 3 metre sort of depth range. I know that a lot of flathead will sit in that depth of water at this time of the year. And I've got a lure that's running nicely at that depth, so I'm just going to try and find that depth contour and follow it along for a little while and see if I can catch something. Trolling's another one where etiquette is interesting. If you're not trolling and another boat is, you need to be aware of where their lines are. You don't know how far they've got their lures out the back. Some people put their lures 150 metres back, which I think is a bit silly, but just assume that they've got their lures a long way back. Don't cut across the back of them. Give them a wide berth. If you've got to go in that direction, pass well around them or go in front of them. But if you go in front of them, go well ahead again so that they don't have to change their troll run or slow down their boat or whatever. Again, common sense. Now that lure does feel a little bit different now. It may have picked something up this time. Doesn't take long to just crank it in and have a look, and it's well worth doing. No, clean again. I just throw it out there. That cast wasn't very long, probably 20 metres at most, 15 more likely, and then I'll just let out another 10 metres or so of line. And that doesn't leave much on my little BFS reel. So if I do hook something that starts taking some string, I'll have to spin the kayak around and follow it. The BFS reels definitely seem to cast better if you don't load them right up with line, if you keep the line load down to a minimum. I still haven't had anyone explain to me exactly why that is the case. People talk about the weight and so on, but gee, I don't know. 20 metres of fine braid doesn't weigh very much. But something's going on there with the physics. It definitely casts better if you've only got sort of 30 to 50 metres of line on these little BFS reels as opposed to 150 or whatever. So I'm a convert. I start off with about 50 metres of line, and when it gets down to about 30 I'll put another lot on. The nice thing is if you buy a 150 or a 300 metre spool of line, you get a couple of fills out of it, which is good. Alright, I'm pushing up into that run out tide. Not that it's running very fast at the moment, it's slowing right down, getting towards the bottom of the tide. But it means that I can just pedal along in a very relaxed manner know that that lure is swimming nicely back there. It's pushing into the tide, so it's got plenty of action, and that's also helping to keep it down near the bottom. I'd like a pair of 40 to 45 centimetre flathead. That'd be really nice. That'd feed Joe and I. At the moment, I'm just enjoying having that sun on my face. If this is winter, bring it on. Now, you know what I forgot to do when I was prattling on to you about fishing etiquette and put my lure out? I didn't put any S factor on it. And you know me, I love my S factor. I really do think it can make a difference, some days more than others. And probably trolling is one of the areas where I think it wouldn't make as much difference as, say, fishing slowly on the cast and retrieve. But I still think it's worth doing, even if just to mask those human odours. I put a bit of sunscreen on today with the sun being so bright, and I did give my hands a wash afterwards, but there could easily have still been traces of it on my fingers, which might have got transferred to the lure while I was tying it on. So I'll just put a little bit of S factor on there. You don't need much. Rub it in. Now this will be funny. If I catch a fish within 3 minutes of putting this back in the water after putting the S factor on, that'll be confirmation bias or a self-fulfilling prophecy or one of those things, but I'll think it was the S factor that made the difference. Oh, it's just human nature, I guess. See if it happens. I'm hand holding the outfit as I always like to do. I will put it in the rod holder sometimes, particularly if I need to be doing something else, but I'd much rather hand hold it, give that lure a little bit of extra action, and also feel what's going on out there. That way I can feel as soon as it touches the bottom. If it picks up a scrap of weed and it stops swimming properly, I'll feel the vibration change or die off, and I can bring it in and clear it. You miss all those little subtle cues when you've just got the rod in the rod holder. Someone's taking their dog for a walk over there. Ooh, bumped the bottom. Another boat coming. It's a Saturday and there's a reasonable amount of people out on the water, which is really good to see. Hey, that's another thing that I wanted to talk about with etiquette, is sharing other people's spots. You know, when someone shows you a spot to go fishing or teaches you a technique, it's best not to just go and tell everyone else that without at least bouncing it off them first and asking them if it's okay to tell someone else. If it was given to you as a secret, then it should remain a secret. But if it's okay for you to share it, then that's fine, but ask them. Again, it all comes down to communication. A lot of boats moving around. In a tournament situation, we call that running and gunning, and the fact that they're moving around like that tells me that they're probably not catching fish where they were, so they're still looking for fish. I don't think there's a lot happening out here at the moment. Maybe things will pick up when the tide turns and that newly making tide starts to push in. That's one of my favourite times. I do love the last of the run-out tide, what we've got at the moment, especially for flathead, but for any kind of predatory fish. As an old mate of mine used to say, the fish-to-water ratio improves as the level drops, but also pushes all those bait fish and prawns and things off the flats into the deeper water, and that's where the predators will ambush them. So falling tide is really good, but I do love that first flush of a new tide as it comes back in, because what it tends to do is it's not clean, clear oceanic water that pushes in straight away. It's the stuff that's gone out of the estuary that's sitting outside the mouth and then gets pushed back in by the first of that making tide. Sometimes I find that's a really, really good bite time, particularly for mulloway or jewfish, but all sorts of fish will bite well on that first flush of the incoming, and then sometimes it only lasts half an hour, 40 minutes, and then the clean oceanic water comes in, and that can shut things down sometimes. I find the fish are very hard to fool in that super clear oceanic water. But what you can do if you're in a boat, not so much in a kayak because I haven't got the speed to do it, but you can follow that tide change up the estuary system. Stay with that front edge as it goes up the estuary. That's a good little trick too. Caught a lot of dewies over the years doing that. And it works up north on things like barramundi as well. But at the moment, My lure is unmolested. I'll turn around in a minute and go the other way, which is going to be a little bit harsh for camera work. You're going to be looking straight into the sun, and I apologise in advance for that. I've been really enjoying getting back into these Tuesday Yak Chats, and you seem to be enjoying them as well. I'm getting some really good feedback from viewers and listeners because they're available both as videos on YouTube but also as podcasts. I mean, you can use a YouTube video as a podcast, and a lot of people do. They just listen to the audio. But these are also available as dedicated audio-only podcasts on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other usual platforms, as well as through the RSS feed on Buzzsprout, which is the hosting platform that I use for my podcasts. Like all my other Tuesday Chats, this one's brought to you by CM Partners Accounting, who do my accounting, and I absolutely love working with them. They're real people that you can actually talk to on the phone, and they don't talk in a heap of jargon. They'll actually explain things to you in a way that us non-accounting types can understand. So I find them really, really good to work with. If you've had your own accountancy firm in the past and you're not happy with them, you can't get them to communicate with you, or if you're just about to get your first accountancy firm, CM Partners, check them out. Use my link down below. They'll give you a free consultation. Tell them Starlo sent you, and they'll look after you, I promise. Come on, where are these fish? Such a nice day. A flatty should be having a chew. I'll push over here onto the corner of this sandbar where it shallows up again and see if there's one lying there. There's a little bit of a creek mouth up here, and I do like the area in front of it on this bottom half of the last hour of the run-out tide, because anything that was lurking up there in the way of bait fish and prawns and things has got to come out now, and the predators will hang out the front here and wait. Okay, I'm bumping the bottom again. So I'll just move over this way ever so slightly, and I'll start coming around to do a run back down that way. Very relaxing way to get a little bit of exercise. Peddling the native watercraft. Hey, quite a lot of people have been asking me about the kayak as well. This is an Ultimate, Native Watercraft Ultimate FX. It's, wow, I don't know, 12, 13 years old now. They don't actually make this exact model anymore, which I think is a bit of a shame because I really like it. It's almost a crossover between a kayak and a canoe. It's more of a sit-in than a sit-on, and I really like it. It's great for being able to store my camera gear and everything in. But they still make some great models, Native Watercraft. They're my favourite form of propulsion is the pedals and the propeller. I mean, the Hobies are great too, don't get me wrong, and the Hobies have some advantages over the Native Watercraft, particularly in shallow water. You can go into really shallow stuff with those flippers. Just change the motion of your feet so that you keep the flippers up nice and high, and you can go through shallow water. Whereas if I get into anything less than about 50 centimetres, I need to pull the propeller up, grab the paddle out and paddle. And that's really the only drawback of the Native Watercraft that I've found. What I love about them is that instant ability to go into reverse. Yep, sure, the Hobies have got reverse now, but you've got to pull a lever or whatever and switch into reverse, and then you're in reverse, and then you've got to pull that same lever again to go back into forward. I can just instantly go from forward to reverse with the Native Watercraft. And I can also use that function to hold position just by shuffling back and forth. So I really do like them. I couldn't go back to a paddle kayak. You can't hold the rod and paddle at the same time, so this would be in the rod holder. And, you know, if you're casting, you pull up and you make a cast and the kayak starts to spin around in the breeze and you tuck the rod under your arm, pick the paddle up and try and straighten up the kayak, and it's just a pain. Once you've fished this way in a pedal kayak, and I don't care if it's the Hobie style with the flippers or the Native Watercraft style with the propeller, once you've done it, you won't go back. All right, I'll come around. That lure's constantly shuffling the bottom now, so there's a couple of options. I can change lures, I can shorten up the line. The other thing I can do is just simply hold the rod up nice and high, get the tip up as high as I can, and the lure won't run quite as deep, still touching the bottom. So I will shorten it just a bit, bring it a bit closer to the boat and still hold it up. And now it's not touching quite as often. Still bumping occasionally, but it's just running in that nice depth range just above the bottom. Another angle of etiquette that I was just thinking about is anglers on a stream, one moving upstream, one moving downstream, and this is particularly applicable in, say, trout fishing, and particularly trout fishing with fly or lures. Some people like to travel upstream and cast ahead of themselves. Some like to travel downstream, and there are actually fly fishing styles that suit one way or the other. I remember many years ago, my good mate Gary McDonald and I were in New Zealand. We were on the Tongariro River, famous trout river on the North Island. Indicator nymphing for trout was still in its fairly early stages in those days. Now it's the prime method for catching trout in the Tongariro and a lot of other rivers, and what we were using was big fluffy indicators that are virtually afloat and a weighted nymph hanging a good distance underneath so that it ticks along the bottom, and you watch that indicator and you fish upstream. You walk upstream and you cast ahead of yourself and you bring that indicator back down with the nymph underneath it ticking along the bottom, and if the indicator stops or jerks underwater or moves backwards against the flow, you strike. And sometimes it's a snag and sometimes it's a fish. It's a great way to fish, very exciting, very effective. But in the days before indicator nymphing, nearly everyone fished the Tongariro by fishing down and across with wet flies often on sinking lines. So you cast across the river, let the current swing your line downstream, and then retrieve across and back up, and then take a couple of steps down and repeat the process. And when downstream wet fly fishermen ran into upstream nymph fishermen, there was often a bit of conflict. I can remember two old boys running into Gary and I that day. We were working our way upstream, indicator nymphing. They're coming downstream, swinging their big wets, and they were very disparaging. They described our form of fishing as schoolboy fishing. Oh dear. What do you do in a situation like that? Well, the best thing to do is bring in your nymphing line and let the wet fly fishers fish through, a bit like playing golf. Let them play through and then you go in and keep moving upstream. If you are fishing upstream like that and there's another angler ahead of you, it's very poor form to go around them and start fishing in front of them. Again, stay behind them. Fish the second-hand water if they were there first. You'll catch fish in second-hand water. Don't make any mistakes about that. Don't get around in front of someone and try and cut them off and get onto the unfished water. There goes another boat. Oh, what happened to my lovely sunny weather? A big cloud just went over the sun, and I reckon the temperature dropped about 4 degrees, and the breeze has kicked in too. It's a nor'easter, not that common at this time of year, and they tend to be a bit cool, the nor'easters in the winter months. Hey, speaking of fly fishing, and I was just touching on fly fishing, talking about that upstream, downstream conundrum, it's worth mentioning that I see a little bit too much snobbery and sense of hierarchy in fishing sometimes. And I'm guilty of it myself. Whenever I list the different forms of fishing, I always say bait, lure or fly, as if there's an ascending ladder there, that one is slightly better than the other and then fly fishing's at the top of the pile. And I think that's a really, really mistaken idea. Some of the best anglers that I've ever known have been bait fishers, and nearly all the good ones that I've known have certainly started out as bait fishers, even if they later went on to fish mostly with lures or even mostly with fly. And I think it's really wrong to elevate one form of fishing above the other and think that it has more kudos, more esteem, more prestige than the other style of fishing. And sadly, a lot of fly fishermen do seem to think that way, and it's one of the reasons I think that other anglers tend to be put off a little bit by fly fishers sometimes. They can come across as a little bit arrogant. What have we got? I don't think it's a fish. Suddenly a weight just came onto that lure. I reckon I might have found my first bit of weed. Oh, it fell off. It was a bit of weed. Yeah, so don't fall into the trap of thinking that the way you fish is somehow superior to the way someone else fishes. If they want to bait fish, or they want to lure fish, or they want to troll, or they want to cast, or they want to fly fish, just accept the fact that we're all different. Different things float our boat. I love all those styles of fishing. Sure, fly fishing is probably my favourite. I would rather catch a fish on fly than any other form of tackle. I just think it's really good fun, it's challenging. But I also know when to hang the fly rod. Oh, that was a hit. That was a hit for sure. Little sharp. And then I've gone straight into weed or something. But it's interesting, now that I'm in this more broken country with some weed beds, I've had my first hit. Where was I? Hierarchy of fishing. Don't fall for it. It's all fishing. It's all trying to fool a critter with a brain the size of a pea into eating something that we put in front of it. And it's all good, and no form of it is automatically superior to another form. Some of the worst fishermen I've ever met are ones that have gone straight in at the upper end. They've started their careers as game fishers or fly fishers or whatever, and they just haven't done their apprenticeship with bait and lures. And you miss out on so much if you don't do those things. And I reckon if you don't come back to them reasonably regularly too. Like I said, I love my fly fishing. I'd rather catch a fish on fly than any other tackle, but I also love lure fishing, and I love bait fishing. Some styles of bait fishing in particular, float fishing, for example, absolutely floats my boat. I love watching that float stem, seeing it slide under the surface. Doesn't matter if it's a quill float with a mud eye under it for a trout, or a greenweed or a cabbage bait under a float for a blackfish luderick, or a mullet on a bit of bread under a float. It's all good. In fact, fishing is all good. If we bear that in mind, I think we'll have a lot less conflict with other anglers. And if we just communicate with each other, we'll have a lot less problems as well. Whew, that temperature is dropping. Oh, that feels more like it. That's a fish. Ooh. Not doing much. But I could tell from the hit that it was a fish. It's being very flathead-like. Just coming quite easily at the moment. It'll play up in a minute, I'm sure. I don't think it's very big. But I caught something in a yak chat. Oh, what the... Oh, you've got to be kidding me. Look at that. It's a little snapper. Little baby snapper. Oh. That's interesting. Look, he's missing the whole top lobe of his tail. Something's chewed it off at some stage. Wonder if it'll grow back. Probably not. But he still seems in pretty good condition. Look at the colours on that. See the missing lobe on the tail? Yay! We caught something in a yak chat. Slightly bigger than the lure. Alright. Well, one little snapper and one other hit. It's been very quiet out here this afternoon. I'll stick with it. I've got another good hour and a half until the sun sets, so I'll keep going. But I hope that the little chat about fishing etiquette has made you think about a few things, mostly about just communicating, talking to other anglers, and also thinking about how you'd like people to treat you and how you'd like them to respect your space and your fishing choices, and just apply the same things to them. That's the best way to make etiquette work. If you've got some ideas for future episodes, let me know. Always keen to hear your ideas. I'm getting some good feedback on the yak chats. I'll catch you next Tuesday for another one. But of course my standard episodes will be going up between now and then as well on YouTube. So if you don't already follow my Starlo Gets Real channel on YouTube, make sure you do. Please subscribe. Think about becoming a member. I've got about 115 signed up members now, and they seem to be really enjoying it. I've had very few drop out. They've all stayed on to pay their $5.99 a month. Hey, listen, don't do it on an iPhone or an Apple device, or they'll slug you for $7.99 instead of $5.99, and I don't get the difference. So I think that's a bit rude by Apple. And they'll slug you for that every month, not just the month you sign up either. Oh, that was a hit as well. I might end up getting a couple of fish out here. Until next time, this is Starlo wishing you tight lines. I better concentrate on what I'm doing.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.